May 2024, the Kia Forum in Los Angeles, the live Netflix roast of Kevin Hart. It is an environment designed for absolute ruthlessness, a place where comedians trade brutal barbs, and the concept of too far is actively challenged. But then, comedian Tony Hinchcliffe took the microphone. Bypassing the standard jabs about box office flops, he aimed directly at the deepest personal trauma of fellow comedian Sheryl Underwood. With Underwood sitting just feet away, he delivered a joke mocking the suicide of her late husband, asking out loud how the man survived 3 years in their marriage. The room tightened. The internet erupted. It forced a deeply uncomfortable question. Where exactly do we draw the line between dark comedy and outright emotional cruelty? We have to consider what happens when a person's most devastating private agony is weaponized for a cheap punchline on a global stage. We explore the hidden psychology and the true stories buried beneath these massive pop culture moments. To see the history behind the headlines, hit subscribe. For millions of daytime television viewers, Sheryl Underwood is the embodiment of infectious joy. She is the bubbly, quick-witted co-host of The Talk. But that loud, unapologetic public persona masks a devastating reality. To understand how she absorbed that vicious blow at the roast with such ironclad grace, we have to look past the punchlines. We have to investigate the 34-year private devastation she survived when the cameras were off. In the late 1980s, the cultural landscape surrounding mental health was unforgiving. If you were a Black man suffering from clinical depression, the societal stigma was suffocating. Seeking psychiatric help was routinely dismissed as a weakness, eliminating visible avenues for support. Men were simply expected to tough it out. This was the specific cultural environment that isolated Sheryl's husband, Michael Sparkman. He was a passionate, hard-working chef, but behind closed doors, he was fighting an invisible war. These societal barriers cut off his treatment options, leaving him to face a life-threatening medical condition alone. The climax of that battle arrived on a completely ordinary morning in August 1990, just 3 years into their marriage. Sheryl baked him a German chocolate cake and casually told him to drop the bills in the mailbox before she headed out for the day. Instead of coming home to the life they were trying to salvage, she found a nightmare. Michael had taken his own life. Beside the uneaten cake and the unmailed bills, he left behind a suicide note. That piece of paper carries a heavy, destructive weight. A suicide note ensures the deceased has the final word. It traps the person left behind in an agonizing, unanswerable cycle of what-ifs. Surviving that magnitude of loss is difficult enough, but Underwood had to break into the hyper-competitive world of 1990s stand-up comedy. It's an industry that demands vulnerability, but only the kind you can package into a laugh. Sheryl's strategy was total compartmentalization. She took the trauma, the grief, and the unanswerable questions and locked them in a vault. For 25 years, she maintained complete silence about Michael's fate. She converted her grief into a relentless work ethic. To stay moving, she threw herself into higher education, earning multiple degrees and enlisted in the United States Air Force Reserves. If she kept working, the pain stayed behind the door. The strategy worked. She ascended through the entertainment industry, hitting major milestones, like becoming the first female finalist in the Miller Lite Comedy Search and hosting BET's Comic View, all while projecting an outspoken persona that obscured her past. Underwood used her professional ambition to build a buffer, a psychological defense designed to protect her from an industry that preys on vulnerability. In 2016, that defense finally came down. Having secured a very stable, powerful platform as a co-host on The Talk, Sheryl found the solid ground necessary to break her quarter-century of silence. She didn't open up for sympathy. She spoke out to put a real human face to the devastation of suicide, aiming to dismantle the cultural stigma that had trapped Michael in the first place. She began using her daytime television platform to analyze these high-profile tragedies. Following the death of fashion designer Kate Spade, Sheryl spoke openly on air about the specific cruelty of the suicide note, sharing her experience to help the public understand the burden it places on those still alive. When country music icon Naomi Judd died by suicide, Sheryl delivered a highly impassioned message to Judd's surviving daughters. She urged them to stop internalizing the blame, strongly warning against the destructive what-if syndrome that often consumes survivors. By tearing down her own walls, she evolved from an entertainer hiding her trauma into a fierce advocate, using her lived experience to reach others in the same position. Knowing her 34-year journey of survival completely changes the context of that cruel, shocking moment in the arena. The joke acted as a highly public stress test, and she passed it effortlessly. No comedian on a dais could possibly break a woman who had already survived the absolute worst day of her life. She didn't flinch. She maintained total composure, waited for her moment, fired a blistering joke right back, and reclaimed her power over the room. Underwood proudly led Zeta Phi Beta as its international president, mobilizing the organization to partner with the March of Dimes and the American Cancer Society, while funding relief efforts for survivors of domestic violence. She is the longest-running co-host in her show's history and primary caregiver for her disabled sister. The laughter she generates on stage is deeply grounded in a life spent navigating the heavy weight of that loss. Michael had the final word in 1990. Today,